this film, Anthony Hopkins plays Anthony, an old man struggling to maintain his sense of reality and the world around him, much to the frustration of his daughter, played by Olivia Colman. Now, I thought this was great. Finally, somebody in Hollywood with the courage to stand up and say, living with old people is terrible. I remember once my grandmama came to stay with us when I was younger, and her smells, the fact that she walked in on me whilst I was in the bathroom on 3 separate occasions in a short 2-week period, and the sound she made when she ate a tomato will haunt me until my very last days. And so the craft to be able to put that into a film, I'd give this 9 out of 10. In this film, Daniel Kaluuya plays real-life Black Panther and revolutionary Fred Hampton as he battles against racism and Martin Sheen in 1960 Chicago. Now, I thought this was magnificent, but gosh, Black people have had it tough in this country, haven't they? I have to say, if the metric for how badly a people have been and are treated is how miserable you feel after watching films based on their struggles, then with all due respect to gay people, women, Jews, and American Muslims, African Americans take the title, thanks in no small part to really depressing films like this one. I give it 9 out of 10. In this film, Frances McDormand plays a woman who chooses to live her life out on the road, in a van, and the trials and tribulations that are associated with that most nomadic of lifestyles. Now, I thought this was terrific. It really puts you inside that life, a life that you've likely never experienced yourself, and allows you to feel what it would be like. And baby, that's cinema. I mean, think about it. If you lived your life on the road, in a van, very little electricity, very little internet, very little TV, your life would be boring. But because you'd be in America, one of the most beautiful environments to drive across, it would be punctuated with very pretty sunsets and vistas and sights. Your life would be pretty, and it would be boring. It would be pretty, and it would be boring. It would be pretty, boring. And the film really leans into that. Oh. So I give this film 9 out of 10. In this film, Gary Oldman stars as real-life screenwriter Herman Mankiewicz, writer of celebrated black and white winter sports film Citizen Kane. Now, I thought this was spectacular. It was always going to do well, as it is a film made in Hollywood, about Hollywood, but it decides to go hyper-Hollywood with its casting. Now, you'll all be well aware that it is just standard operating procedure within Hollywood for a leading man to be 5 to 10 years older than his leading lady because of neck skin and other reasons. But this film takes age discrepancy to the power of Hollywood by casting for 2 real-life characters who at the time the film was set were both 43 years old, with 35-year-old Amanda Seyfried and 62-year-old Gary Oldman. The male role is actually 10 months younger than the female role, but the male actor is 27 years older. That's Hollywood, and that's why I'm giving this film 9 out of 10. In this film, Steven Yeun plays a Korean man who moves his young family from California to Arkansas in the 1980s in order to start a farm and chase the American dream. Now, I thought this was delightful. It's a film that covers a lot of different topics in quite a short space of time, like religion, old people, heart disease, racism, how sometimes even having a beautiful Korean wife isn't enough to make you happy, and the healing properties of Mountain Dew. But the big takeaway that I took from this film may be obvious, but I truly believe that even obvious lessons need to be repeated to us periodically. The lesson from this film being, Bad things will happen to you if you move to Arkansas. Genius. I give this film 9 out of 10. In this film, Carey Mulligan plays a woman who pretends like she's really into some dudes, then reveals that she isn't into those dudes, and then she just leaves. So far, so standard, am I right? But I thought this was wonderful. Now, the idea that women are the victims of romantic entanglements more than men might seem a little bit out there to some people. But I truly believe that we, as a film-watching public, can learn a lot from these science fiction, fantasy-style films, and I truly commend the Academy for being open-minded enough to include this in their Best Picture nominations. I mean, I, for one, wouldn't know that weirdo computer hacker people are actually sexy, cool, goth geniuses if I hadn't seen The Matrix. Right? So I say give this wackadoo film a try, because I give it 9 out of 10. In this film, Riz Ahmed plays a drummer for an absolutely terrible heavy metal band who slowly loses his hearing and has to learn sign language, and that being a teacher is an okay profession. Now, I thought this was lovely. Riz Ahmed gives a brilliantly bitter performance as somebody whose absolute favourite thing in the entire world is taken away by God for some reason. I mean, mysterious ways and everything, sure, but still it's got to be frustrating. But this is a very layered film as well. It's not just all about Riz. Olivia Cooke plays his bandmate slash co-lover, and she provides us one of the most incredible cinematic arcs of the entire year, as her eyebrows start the film bleached for some reason, and they finish normal again. At first I was like, oh my God, why does that look so flippin' weird? But then by the end I was like, okay, they're back to normal again, thank goodness. And to elicit that takes cinematic skill. So I give this film 9 out of 10. In this film, Sacha Baron Cohen leads an ensemble cast who play a kind of angry, complainy, whingy, gobby Avengers who are all brought together by fate in order to fight the tyranny of evil. But unlike the Avengers, it's less punch, punch, punch and more talk, talk, talk. But that's absolutely fine. Now, I thought this was top notch. There's this bit where Sacha Baron Cohen's character goes to live with these two redneck guys for a bit, and at one point he tries to hit COVID with a hammer and a frying pan, and then his daughter's in it, and his daughter does this dance, and I might be confusing some elements of this with the new Borat film. Borat's very good. This film is very good. And The Avengers is very good. All three of these films, good films. And interesting, speaking of The Avengers, interesting, the lead character of Judas and the Black Messiah, Fred Hampton, is actually a character in this film as well. So in a way, it does kind of set up a civil rights struggle cinematic universe. And I, for one, am very excited to see where they take the CRSCU from here, because they've kicked it off with a film that I would give 9 out of 10.
Notme made this super cool art for himself, but also for you. And now the art is done, there's something he would love you to do. A like would be great, but if you subscribe, that would be swell. He needs 100 subscribers for his custom URL.